Blast from the past there. Retro intro. I spend so much time in here now that I just thought, why is my M4 silicon Apple chip in the front house and I never use it, and I'm using an M1 that's 5 years older, and I just switched them. And then I didn't have time to get everything prepared and I wanted to just go. So I found the old intro on this computer and just went with it. So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this is the Talamanca Review. It's Thursday, the 18th of December, and it's 9:59 p.m. I like to ease into my podcasts by just talking about regular daily stuff, and then it sort of spins off from there. So that's what I'm going to do. My number one fans down there. So today, based on the curiosity I've achieved with artificial intelligence as a tool, okay, and that's the critical word there, as a tool. So artificial intelligence is a tool that I enjoy right now, and I'm going to continue to enjoy it because it massively increases my productivity. And so I became a little bit curious, and I happened upon this 42-minute documentary done by Vice Media, and they were interviewing Shane. I think the guy's Shane something. He's the guy that runs Vice now. He was interviewing a young man, I guess maybe in his 30s, named Julian Kelly, who's the senior developer or project lead for the Willow chip at Google. And Willow is like phase 3 or 4 of quantum computing. And holy cow, talk about having your mind blown. I've heard short talks on quantum computing before, but nothing explained it to me more clearly than this 42-minute documentary. And quantum computing is truly, truly mysterious. And it's right around the corner. And if they're talking about it in public, then you know that it's already existing. Oh, my number one fan wants to leave. He's not liking the talk on quantum computers tonight. Hang on. Hey, buddy, but this is like Final Jeopardy, right? This is your last. Yeah. He's my best buddy till he hears someone in the kitchen and thinks he might get some scraps thrown at him. So quantum computing is in a nutshell, it transcends the Boolean process. So the thinking process of any computer, and the reason we have AI now is because we've trained large language models, and we've super amplified the graphical processor units. And I did work a short contract at AMD back in 2015. I don't know, 2007, 2008, a long time ago. I've been all over the place. I've been in a bunch of really big companies. It was an enjoyable contract. I didn't like my boss. Interesting story, but I won't get into it tonight. Um, So a few things have allowed us to bring AI to market so people like me can, I do it in the cloud. So I have a $39.95 subscription with a GitHub Copilot. And that's all I need right now, right? But as I get into, I have to seriously consider buying a new computer now because as I get into sensitive grant writing, I can't be putting stuff into the cloud. Um, not, I mean, I personally don't think it matters at this point, but I could be a little paranoid. I don't know. But that's just my feeling on it. But what I did set my Copilot settings to do not use my data to train models and destroy my data as soon as I'm finished whatever the agent is doing. And so I hope you guys understand what I mean there. But if you haven't spent any time in AI, you might not. And that's almost the same thing. But ultimately, what this leads to is um, offline artificial intelligence where you're not using the network at all. And that requires a super powerful computer. You could do it with uh, um, what do they call them? Mac Design, I think it's called. It's like a one up from the Mac Mini. And you can get those with it all depends on the number of CPU and GPU cores on your chip. And the silicon chips anticipated artificial intelligence coming in 2020, 2021 when they brought them out. But you need really powerful computers. Like this is like, man, this is like 1997 all over again. That what we call a computer today, a standard computer for like WhatsApp, writing, podcasting, stuff like that. It's all going to be there. It's all going to be obsolete in a year or two. Everybody's going to be buying new $1,500, $2,500, $3,000 machines and hope they won't be obsolete for 2 years. But everything is moving so fast now. So fast, it's unbelievable. And so it has to do with the what's called unified RAM, random access memory, and the CPU and the GPU. And you need a lot of all three of those things. You need a very powerful CPU, you need a very powerful GPU, and you need a fully stacked out RAM. So NVIDIA just came out with a home AI computer. They call it the most powerful supercomputer, like factory built supercomputer or home mini computer on the market. It's $3,995 US. And it has this thing called Blackwell architecture. The latest NVIDIA GPU, which is the graphical processing unit, and then a super powerful CPU, and an architecture to train large language models. So I'd like to get one for next year. We'll see how my earnings go and whether it's within reach, but hopefully. And alternatively, a Mac Mini M4 Ultra with 64 or 128 gigabytes of RAM would also do the job. But that's about $4,000 as well. So suddenly the age of cheap computers is over for me as I move into AI. And you're not going to be able to do what I do for a living. You're not going to be able to do anything in the near future without AI. You're going to see people going into court and blowing away what we call in Canada crown prosecutors, because the crown prosecutors are overworked, underpaid, and people are going to be going in with massive defenses for parking tickets just to litigate them. And all the paperwork's going to be correct. Like as I'm working with this all day and I'm looking at this and I'm going, holy cow, I'm redoing the Jordan Maxwell book. It takes a few days, right? It takes a few days. But and I'm finishing up the David Dubine book. He's doing his edits now. And that's a massive book. It's 500 pages with an index and appendices, and it's just a really well organized book. And I did it all with AI. If I had done that the old fashioned way and just taken David's transcripts and written a book, man, it would have been about a year to finish, working every day, 4 to 6 hours. That's how powerful AI is. Okay, and these books are good. I mean, the Jordan Maxwell book captures Jordan's voice. Okay, I do what's called a voice cue first. All right, so if let's say I have 40 transcripts downloaded, and each transcript is like 20,000 words, right? Which is like an hour or 2 hours. It's about 10,000 words per hour of talking on any podcast, because I've done so many of them now. I did it not to sell, but I just did a demo of the Danny Jones podcast and his 10 best UFO interviews. And so I have a good sense for the numbers. You want a book to come in around 80,000, 100,000 words. 100,000 is about 300 pages. 80,000 is about 255, 265. So that's the length I'm very comfortable with. Stardust is that length. Light of Darkness is that length. Galactic Historian is that length. The Devil in Us is that length. So it's very interesting to me. And I'm looking at all this stuff, and as I'm doing this work, and it's sinking in what's happening, because as I said, I'm a master of my trade. I'm a book designer, a cover designer. I'm everything to do with books now. I could run one man publishing house now. I could put up a website and run a business now where people could leave a tangible story behind as a legacy for their families. So I could sell this service for, let's say, 10,000 US, and I work with the person for a month. And every day I get the person on the computer. They're, 80, 85 years old, and they just begin to tell me their life story. I shape it with questions. I provoke them a little bit with questions, try to make them cry, find out I'm not like going to abuse old people. Don't get me wrong here. But you just try to get everything out of them, right? And you talk to them every day for about 2 or 3 weeks. And you talk to them for 2 or 3 hours, and you transcribe the recordings. And this is all done by AI now. You don't need a separate service. You don't need a transcription service for $35 a month. You don't need this. You don't need that. It's one AI subscription now. That's it. Okay. And you just get the person's whole story out of their life. And then as a storyteller, I begin to work on the transcripts through AI. And this is done with these elaborate prompt files. So the first thing I do when I'm starting a project is I design a plan to capture the voice, and I say everything I want. And you just turn on my mic and I speak into the chat box for the AI, which is connected to my developer environment. And I say, I want you to capture this person's voice. I want you to capture their speed of their thinking, the speed of their speaking. I want you to strip out all the ums and ahs. But I want anybody who knows this person to be able to pick up this book and say, that's Jordan Maxwell's voice. That's how he spoke. That's how he would sound if all the ums and ahs were taken out of his lectures and the repetitions and stuff, but it's him. So you create a voice template, and then the voice template becomes a component of the book plan, and then you direct the AI to write the book plan, and then you have these two files. They're each about 3,000 words, and they're a series of prompts. And this is how you chunk everything, right? Because you can't just go to AI. Hey, I got 40 transcripts in my workspace. Can you make a book, a memoir of this guy for me? Click. That's not how it works. you got to learn it a little bit. Prompting is like a sub language, which is why I'm realizing I'm so good at this. My forte in life is language. No math skills, language. Okay? And prompting AI is language. It's it, it's getting information out of something the way you want it returned to you. It's almost, think of the line of questioning that a homicide detective will do when somebody is being interviewed as a suspect in a murder. It's the same thing. It's a series of prompt questions to solicit information and reactions. Same thing with the AI. So I could do this memoir business. I'm thinking of doing it actually, you know? I don't know. I got so many things going on now. I don't need to create any more problems with myself, but it's a fascinating idea. And you could leave to your family, your children, your grandchildren, you could leave your life story and part of the and begin a legacy for the family where you end up, in 5 generations, you've got like 10 or 15 of these 250-page books that are the life story of your family. This is my grandfather's life story. This is my grandmother. This is how he tells they met each other. This is how she tells they met each other. You know, it's like the possibilities are endless, like just endless. And then I saw this thing on quantum computing. And then I got the moment of fear, hesitation, and doubt that everybody gets. And then I saw it, you see? So for me, things aren't real till I see it myself. If I hear the XC, holy cow, #1 fans back. Most unprofessional podcast on the internet, but I like it. It's folksy. Got myself a coffee and lit the stogie. So hey, look, I wanna put something out there, okay? If any of you have a speaking relationship with Jason Burchars, I think that's his name, the Archaics guy, tell him I want to talk to him and tell him I want to do a book because I think his material would be really good for a book because it's all over the place in his podcast. But if you got, and I know his podcasts are enormous, but another good thing AI is good at is contracting everything. So you could say to the AI, take this 40,000 word transcript from this lunatic's 4-hour podcast and write me a 5-page outline of the critical points that he makes. Okay? I don't need the proofs. I don't need him expounding upon it. Just distill it down to what is this guy saying. And then from there you build your chapters. So his would make a good book actually. So, and I can show him what I've done with David Dubine for the Grand Solar Minimum to help him understand. So if any of you know him, tell him I want to do this, okay? And not anybody can do this. Okay, you gotta have those like writing chops. You have to be able to sit at a desk all day, except instead of like working on your own book, it's very similar to writing a book, except the work is different. It's more reviewing things and saying, how does this go together? And all of these sorts of things. So I'd like to do a book with them. Anyways, getting back on track. I had my aha moment today where I finally got it, what all of these people have been talking about. Okay? And the part I was missing was the merger between quantum computing and artificial intelligence. And let me tell you, that is that is going to be something mind-boggling. That might be the truly uncontrollable AI. And in this documentary I watched tonight, they showed some of these quantum computers. They look like Tesla devices. There's all this copper tubing. I mean, it looks like something out of a 1950s sci-fi movie. Okay? If you're curious, look up the Willow Google chip. So, with that rather long intro, I'm just going to move into the more Talamanca review topics, okay? So, one of the ways that I figure things out or come to my conclusions, because I can't say I figured things out because it would be saying I predict the future or this or that, and I don't. But one of the ways that I go about looking at things is I look at the whole world. I look at everything. And I say, okay, well, what's going on? And then I say, why is it going on? And then the most important part of it is trying to connect things that seem remarkably disparate. They don't seem connected, but actually they're completely connected. So here goes. We're definitely, as of now, in a period of heightened conflict and heightened tension in the world. It seems in many ways as though we're on the verge of an evolutionary leap as a species that defies Darwin, that defies the theory of evolution itself. It seems nearly impossible. And my gut says this is not human. I'm pretty sure that what we're in now is not human. You know, the human being is a very simple animal. I've never been happier than the time I've spent up on this mountain with Rosemary and Sol and Lulu and my annoying 17 cats. My nieces and nephews. I got 4 nephews sleeping in the back house tonight. They're here. They're going to be here for 2 months now. It's the summer break over here. So December and January are the summer break. But they during the day they go over and help their dad, um, Stephen, my brother-in-law, and they're just assistants, right? They don't actually do any work, but they run around and get stuff for him. Maybe mix some ceramic mortar or something like that. And then at night they come here. Yeah, they're still up now. I just looked out the window. And it's nice to have them here. Cost me a fortune in food though, but who cares, right? It's worth it to have them here. And this seems to me to be what a human being is. We're a social animal. We have to answer certain questions about existence, but those are done through the heart and they're done through the soul, the pure perception. We know this has been a pastime of human beings since time immemorial. We know it through Werner Herzog's Cave of Forgotten Dreams. If you haven't seen that documentary, I highly recommend you do. We we know it through the mythologies of the various tribes. The Hopi probably being the most oft quoted by our sort of people, the people who do podcasts. So we know that they had a rich, multidimensional existence. Rich, in many ways richer than ours today, even with the quantum computing and everything we're doing. And that's a stopper right there. That statement in and of itself is a stopping point. We have to stop and think about that for a moment. Why is that? Is there a trade-off in this human experience? Are we supposed to be spending a certain amount of time in a human life inwardly centered without sleeping? Take that to mean whatever you want. Pray, contemplate, meditate, any other form of spiritual exercise you can think of. And for me, the clear answer is yes. Our inability to interpret the reality around us are a solution to age-old problems like the possessed, the bothered, whether they be dibbucks or demons or just delinquent, I guess the Gentile version of a dibbuck, which is a delinquent human being who has passed into another form but is still close to the earth and addicted to the things of the earth. And they cohabitate consciousness with people and take them over and drive them mad. But that whole realm is run by the demonic hierarchy. It's interesting to me that some of the oldest problems of the human race were better handled by older peoples. And they handled it much better. It's changing a little bit now with people like Jerry Marzinski. Look him up if you don't know who he is. Just Google Jerry Marzinski schizophrenia possession. Very briefly, he was a psychiatric counselor at a maximum security prison in the United States for 20 years. And through a series of incidents, it was revealed to him that this schizophrenia doesn't really exist. So why did our ancestors know these things? All of our ancestors, the pagan Germans, the pagan Celts, the pagan English, the pagan French, the Greeks certainly understood it. The ancient Hebrews understood it, clearly captured in the Torah. Why is it that all of this stuff was understood? Why is it that communication with non-physical beings was completely understood? I was watching another YouTube video the other day. I think it was a tribe. It looked like Papua New Guinea to me. And they were being interviewed by a Westerner, and they were explaining to this guy through a series of questions and answers between them what they were describing was the duende. They were talking about a little people about 3 feet tall that live in the jungle. Okay? And you look at these guys, I mean, they're not wearing shirts, or some of them are, some of them aren't. Some of them have blue jeans on, some of them are wearing some traditional tribal loincloth. They've got these necklaces they've made from various things in the jungle. In terms of manifestation, technology, mathematics, completely primitive. But not one among them did not have an experience with sentient life other than human beings. Now, don't just gloss over this, okay? I want you to really think about this for a moment because it's important. Why have we lost this natural connection with life and the ability to understand what's going on here more than just the physical? Why? Yeah, we've got quantum computing, we've got artificial intelligence, we've got quantum AI on the horizon. But why are we so lost in the very basic aspects of spirituality? Well, I'll tell you why, because I'm working on a book now about the guy who told us why, Jordan Maxwell. Because we haven't had good spiritual instruction for 2 millennia. We've been under a mind control system. That's what the Abrahamic system is. It's mind control. It's human population behavior control. It's not based on individual experience. It's based on teachings from a learned person in a black dress, standing in a pulpit, whether it be a synagogue, a mosque, or a church, telling us about a reality he only believes in but hasn't experienced himself. Now, I want you to take a moment and consider the irony of that. Because in every other aspect of a human existence, we're the most rational, evidence-based, proof-based, experience-based people on the planet. You know, the Wright brothers, hey, I can make an airplane that'll fly. Prove it. Okay, come on down to the beach on Sunday. Boom. The plane goes up in the air, stays there for 15 or 20 minutes. They invented the airplane. Hooray. Okay? We're so rational in everything we do except the consciousness field. Our consciousness field is either belief systems that are forced upon us from a cultural imprint or non-serious pseudo rituals that are just an excuse to trip on a medicine like ayahuasca. Okay? So you want to know why we can't find our place in the world? Because we're not spending time with the world. We first worlders were all in our heads. Chinese are the same way now. They're going to go the same route as us. Too much education, too much manifestation, whether it be technology, manufacturing, whatever. It's just too much of it. Yeah, I'm saying these things. The guy who's considering buying a NVIDIA GPX Spark next year for $3,995 to do home AI, local AI to protect my client's privacy. I was talking to a listener off air, listener of the Talamanca Review. I make that distinction. She's a friend now, but I make this distinction because I didn't know her before the Talamanca Review. And she had done some form of coursework related to consciousness based on some fellow, a Canadian no less, who received a download in the 80s and presented this material to the world. And she was talking about the basic archetypes of human being, you know. There are generators, there are projectors, and all of these sorts of things. And I was listening to her and I found it interesting. I myself don't like to dissect things like that, but it was an interesting conversation. And she said that I was an anomaly, and I was an anomaly because I was simultaneously extremely tactile. Tactile meaning very physical, you know, and also very inwardly expansive. And she said those two things usually don't go together, but they do. For me, they go together. And another thing about us, Westerners, I don't think there are any human beings on the planet more susceptible to cults than us. I mean, everybody's susceptible. I mean, I consider Jehovah's Witnesses a cult. I consider the Mormons a cult. Please, I'm not trying to offend anybody. If you're Mormon and you listen to the Talamanca Review, a wonderful family culture, the Mormons, a wonderful morality, purity of living, no tobacco, no coffee. I respect it. Don't get me wrong, okay? But it's a consciousness trap, okay? It was designed and deployed by Masons, as was Jehovah's Witnesses. Scientology is some form of Satanism light. And these things all happen in the West. There's no cults over here. There's cultural imprinting. I find the expression of Christianity over here the best I've ever seen. There are no theologians over here. There are no pundits over here. Anyone I've met who espouses Christianity over here, they live it through their heart. And it's beautiful. And it works. Because this is what the people that Christianity was targeting. This is the people that the Christ was targeting. The Christ wasn't targeting the Roman senators and the Sanhedrin and all the people who think they know it already, right? But there's no people on the planet more susceptible to cults than us. Why do you think that is? Legitimate question. It's because of this deficit in us. It's because we've externalized ourselves so much that the internal deficit is huge. It's the Grand Canyon now, right? We're not balanced anymore. What other culture would quantum AI come out of other than ours? Now, when you digest the enormity of quantum computing and quantum AI, and you digest the enormity of the evolving contact narrative, ET contact narrative in the human race, and you look at the state of our cultures, and you look at the socio-political machinations, Mark Carney basically turning Canada into a Nazi concentration camp. And I'm not even being hyperbolic. I'm not even embellishing. It is so scary what's going on in Canada now. I talk to Canadians, they don't really get it. They get it, but they have to sort of tune it out because it's too much. As I say many times on the Talamanca Review, most human beings, they have a bandwidth. This is the negative, this is the positive, and this is their reality. They go too far into the positive, they get freaked out. They go too far into the negative and they get freaked out. Expansion of consciousness happens bilaterally, like this. You see more darkness and you get more light to cope with it. And then at the end, it all circles back and connects, and you see it's all one thing. And people are so afraid to make this journey. And who can blame them? The entire system we've set up in the first world is based on fear and obedience. And it was like that even for the baby boomers. It's been like that since World War II. Pay your mortgage, pay your monthly bills, all of these things. And nobody else lives that way. You know, when I complain a lot about Stephen and stuff, I realized I'm projecting my North American template onto him. That if I contract him to do something, I expect him to work 5 or 6 days a week until it's done. And that's just not the way they do things over here at all. So connecting all of these things is the task of the podcast tonight. How can things be so good and so bad at the same time? If we're on the cusp of some form of liberation with all of this technology and the growing consciousness, and consciousness is growing, it hasn't met morality yet, which is a problem. Just because you have an expanded consciousness doesn't mean that the laws of morality given to us mainly by our Hebrew brothers and sisters don't apply anymore. I've met a lot of psychically developed people who don't understand that. And then they get all imbalanced and they have these crazy narratives for what's happening to them. And it's true, I mean, but everything that comes into their field, they attract it some way because they're not living in a balanced way. Or they get really dark and start killing people. There's a lot of these new age teachers out there. Look, if you have some kind of talent in consciousness and you put it out there and you attract a following and you're making $1 million, $2 million a year, if anybody comes along and tries to tip that canoe, well, you're going to get killed. And it's no different than the evangelical church system or anything else. The New Age people are the new evangelicals. They're the new Joel Osteens. You know, they're doing it for money most of the time. There are noble exceptions, but 99% of the time, no. My thesis is correct. We've been led to this moment in history and this unfoldment for the human race through a human extraterrestrial alliance that was made. And the technology was delivered to us, and we get a group of human beings gave up the rights and autonomy of other human beings under this person contract, this Admiralty law contract, the birth certificate. And it's reached a point now where it's, as Phil Schneider told us, the world has to be depopulated by about 90%. And everything that's being built now is moving along those lines. And if you remember the James Bond movies, you've got M, who is sort of the head of the 007 team in MI6. And then you've got Q, and Q is the weapons maker, and if you go back as far as Bond as I do, I think I've seen them all, right? Beginning with From Russia with Love and Dr. No with Sean Connery, all the way up to the Daniel Craig version. But Q is the weapons master, And this is basically the blueprint of the groups of people that have been steering us to this point we're at now. And we didn't discover this. This has been a slowly unfolding generational plan. The technology was probably delivered in one fell swoop. And I mean delivered. I don't buy this Bob Lazar reverse engineering bullshit or any of this crap. It's all a psyop. You know, DARPA as the sort of Q division and sorcerers, basically, Kabbalistic and Masonic and other forms of sorcerers make up the M class, in the Bond model, the head of the office. And between Q and M, DARPA and the sorcerers, we've been led to this moment. It sounds insane. I mean, even as I'm saying it out loud here, there's still a remnant in my head going, Bruce, people are going to think you're crazy. But it's hard to refute this is what's going on. Okay? And now, the only thing I haven't made my mind up on is whether in some freaky way this is actually beneficial for the human race. That maybe this has to happen. Maybe, I mean, look around. Look at the Somalis in Minnesota. And I'm not picking on them, okay? Why are all these people who don't belong in the first world being thrown into the first world? Whether it's the North Africans in Europe or the Pakistanis in England or the Hindu Indians in Canada who have just basically brought the Indian Civil War to Canada between the Sikhs and the Hindus, the Punjabis and the southern provinces. We have terrorism, all of these things now, and all of this infighting in these communities in Canada. How did 300,000 Somalis end up in Minnesota? There were 2,000 Somalis in the United States, total number, 2,000 Somalis in the United States in 1991. 34 years later, we have 300,000. Do they breed that quickly? No. And again, you can't become negative about these things. You have to think everything through. Is there something they know we don't know? Is there going to be a pole shift? Is something going to happen? And these are compassionate measures to keep remnants of all civilizations alive because Western Europe and North America, coincidentally, what we call the first world, is where most of the survival is going to take place? Well, I find that to be a specious argument. Doesn't make any sense. If that were true, based on all the work I've just done with David Dubine and going through his material, if this was truly about saving people, they'd be moving everybody into the tropics. Like a little bit north and a little bit south of the equator, all around the circumference of the globe. They'd be packing in all of the cultures and languages of the earth into that region, because that's going to be the growing region that survives the grand solar minimum. I mean, you can survive in other parts of the world, but you have to be prepared. You have to have greenhouses built. You have to be able to grow vegetables in the winter. You have to know a lot of stuff. Or go underground. So the benign reason for the immigration that they can't tell us because it would incite mass panic isn't true. Which means they're doing this on purpose. And throughout all of this, we have these crazy rabbis telling us we have to be destroyed. It's a mitzvah war. We have to be destroyed to the last infant. Our culture, Rome, Amalek. We have to be destroyed to the last person. That is the will of their God. That means babies' heads have to be cracked over rocks. Well, they don't want to do it. They don't want to do it. But their God told them to. And somehow, magically, this is all happening. Okay? I think a lot of the work of the benign ETs that are reaching out to individuals rather than governments is to let people know what's going on. And I think that the governments, just as Cliff High said, going back to Kissinger and Army intelligence and Majestic 12, I think we made a power, ego, and greed deal with the wrong extraterrestrials, and this is the evolving consequence, just as Phil Schneider told us in the 90s when he was drilling those underground tunnels for these elites that are let's just forget trying to name them, you know? Maybe I should try to name them. Those are the podcasts that get 500,000 or 1,000,000 subscribers. But that's not what's important to me, and I don't think it's what's important to you, my listener. We're down to the final moments here. Whatever this thing is, it's going off in the next 10 or 15 years. Okay? I will see it in my lifetime. I may be old, but I'll see it in my lifetime. And it's going down. I don't even have the faintest idea what to title this podcast. I've already done a podcast called Tying It All Together. Ah, I got it. This is the smirk I was describing a few podcasts back. That's why when you see these people that are in on it, they all have this sort of demonic smirk like the Joker. You know, Cami Harris, Joe Biden, Donald Trump, Stephen Miller, Mike Johnson, all of these smug fucks because they made their part of the deal, the remnant of humanity that goes forward. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been the Talamanca Review.